If you come into a place where you're not sure you're welcome, if you come into a place looking for great things to happen, but you're not comfortable getting there, then you're not going to be successful. And Elson knew that.
We knew going into it that this project was a little different. It had a purpose, and there was something a little bit deeper there. Elson Floyd was a visionary president, and he had this notion of a celebration of diversity at the front door to campus. It's really that simple idea.
He was a very cryptic type speaker. He said, "Jeff," I said, "Yeah." He said, "What about a cultural center?" And immediately I said, "You need a legacy, Dr. Floyd." He said, "You really think so?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Okay, thank you," click, and he hung up. That's just the way he was.
He kept saying, I want a place where everybody is welcome, where everybody is excited to get to know someone else. All 28,000 students. It just was a part of him to make sure that everybody could be their best self.
Let me give you a little bit of the history. Students for a long time have been advocating to have spaces that reflect who they are, that reflect their communities, that reflect their culture.
What began as a student initiative has really flourished to become this building.
Community significant projects are really, at Absher, what we are built on. We knew going into it that this was going to be one of those projects we would remember and talk about for our entire careers.
President Floyd, in selecting this site, he wanted it at the entrance to campus. He wanted to send that message of welcome.
Isn't that the RV lot during football season? And he says, yes, it is, but we can change it from a parking lot to something really great.
The first thing they'll see when they come out Stadium Way is this building, and that's by design.
Stadium Way runs right through campus, and we're right on the corner, so it kind of greets anybody who comes into campus from this end. They see the Cultural Center that's getting built right up on the corner.
We wanted it to be a place of dialogue where people could really engage and share and learn about one another and challenge one another.
We got a really good understanding of why this project was important, who the stakeholders are.
It's about understanding that culture is dynamic, that it is changing, that we are interdependent upon each other, and that there is knowledge, there is wisdom in our stories, that they aren't just legends.
The status quo is that designers come up with really cool, creative, crazy ideas, and then we bring contractors on board who say, okay, too expensive and not buildable. GGO and Absher didn't want to do that.
I'm a big advocate of design build in the right situations, and this is one of those. We were able to generate a truly unique design that was buildable and affordable.
We took some risks early on in the proposal process to not go in and present them something our first go around, but to try to get a lot of input from them, and I think it put us maybe behind the pack a little bit to begin with.
Actually, the steering committee for WSU tested us a little bit. They were always pushing us in a very provocative but positive, nurturing way, saying, dig deep, do you get it?
They built this sort of sketch of what they thought would be a good idea to start with. We met with Dr. Floyd, and he looked at it and he says, "No, that's not what I want. It's too square."
When we asked him, what is your vision? And he turned his agenda over and he drew a circle. And in the middle, he wrote, celebration of diversity.
We don't want some square rectangle building, This is something of the earth, that there's a sense of circle.
One of the fundamental drivers of the design was the fact that this is Nez Perce land.
We took field trips to the Nez Perce down in Lewiston. We did all kinds of things that you wouldn't ever get an opportunity to do if all you did was take a set of documents and go put a bid to it.
The building isn't trying to conquer. It's not trying to assert itself over the natural surroundings and nature. It's trying to be part of nature.
We brainstormed long and hard to try to come up with this design, and it wasn't until the final meeting that we felt we really captured it.
When we finally got the design packages, it almost looked exactly like the sketch that Dr. Floyd wrote on the back of his agenda in our very last meeting that we had with him. And we just knew right away in our hearts that this is it. They understood the significance of what we were really trying to get at, about creating a sense of home.
And they showed us the model. I couldn't believe it. So where'd you guys come up with this? Well, your ideas manifested itself in this design, and they did. Any thought that you came up with, it would materialize in that model that they created.
So many stakeholders had a passionate, vested interest in it. We couldn't have done it without that process.
The site's undulating gently, and we resisted the temptation to cram the entire building footprint on the site and to manipulate the site to fit the building. We actually went the other way around.
From the inception, when the architect put down a napkin sketch of a roof that looks like the Palouse, that's been the interesting journey.
When we finally came up with sort of the architecture of that roof, it was an aha moment in a good way, and it was an aha moment in, oh.
In 38 years of doing this, I've never built anything like this or seen anything like this. Doesn't have any straight lines, square lines, everything's radiused, everything's obtuse coming to, in and out. I mean, nothing lines up. It's not a box in any way.
This is the type of building that most people probably dream about. As a structural engineer, how do you make something that's curved out of elements that are fundamentally mostly straight?
Did a lot of due diligence up front to making sure that we chose the right species of wood. It's a Port Orford cedar, harvested out of Oregon. The big ones weigh about 7,000 pounds.
The first glue lamps were delivered and they started flying them in. You really saw how tight the space was and how important it was to get things right.
And then I had to tell them the unfortunate news that there's literally no repetition. Every single connection that we make and every single member is different.
It's the first project I've ever worked on where I can truly say from design conceptualization all the way through to layout and construction, it is designed and built all from a 3D model.
The overarching goal was to use the structure as the finish, the wood glue lamps from the ceiling as the finish, using the concrete floor as the finish.
They looked at both longhouses and pit houses, because pit houses were in this area too. They're a little bit more down, down into the earth.
When you go inside the cultural center and you experience the living room, it's actually sunken. You ramp down into the space, and then above it are basically cliffs, is what we tried to mimic.
Elson would always talk about 4 centers in one big building with a common area. He says it's got to have a huge living room because that's where everybody will gather.
There are 4 knowledge rooms that open up to each other and open up to the living room.
These overhead doors here, which have artwork on the other side, open up so they bring the living room together with the knowledge rooms.
Each of the knowledge rooms represents one of the 4 underrepresented cultures of Washington State: Native American, African American, Latino and Latina, and Asian American Pacific Islander.
There's a need for this building to stand for all of the blended ancestries from every point on the globe, and they're all going to want to know, where's my building? Well, this is your building.
Wouldn't it be special if we actually broke up the program and brought the kitchen to the public area? Really celebrate that notion of food.
If they can eat and cook and share their cultures, then they'll share other things about themselves.
The ultimate goal is to create that sense of discovery for each person that visits the building and the site, how to experience that in your own way.
Part of that transformational process is having opportunities and spaces for people to think and reflect. And sometimes you need to do that in private. And so the meditation pavilion is really designed to be that quiet space.
They reminded me a lot of the hippies back in the 60s. There were no boundaries, no filters for these guys.
Having the Elson S. Floyd Cultural Center as the gateway to the campus sends a message to students, to visitors, really to the world, that diversity is important, that culture is important.
He'd have that enormous grin on his face, and he would stand back and just look. And later he'd say, "That's pretty good, huh?" Everything he could have possibly wanted and even more is in this building.
We're very proud to be part of the beacon light into this side of campus, embracing the heritage that was this land, the Nez Perce, and many cultures that have contributed to making Washington State what it is today.
I told him at the end there, he had accomplished what he set out to do. His vision was complete. It's important to people to be able to say, this is ours.
We're really at a crossroads where we are trying to define who we are, where we are, and where we are going in the future. Having honest dialogues about culture, about history, but also about the knowledges that all of our cultures bring is increasingly important in these times.
We need to be able to celebrate each other, to get to know each other and understand each other. And if you come onto this campus and the first thing you see is that you're welcome, your culture is welcome, no matter what your challenges are in life, you have Washington State University to back you up.